The Logic of Dreams by Tom Allen. Arvid stumbled across his face when he ducked into a laundromat. It stared at him over a row of dryers as he stood in the doorway, wiping rain from his rumpled Italian suit onto the cracked porcelain floor. With his own misdelivered features, he glared back, and the chaos of the last day goaded him, finally, to violence. The night before, he'd misplaced his apartment. He'd stood stabbing his key repeatedly into the lock of 308 until Thompson, all lopsided mustache and grease-stained pants, yanked the door open and demanded he f*** off. A wrestling match blared out of a tiny TV, as always. A cat yowled, and the odor of its unchanged litter leaked into the hallway. Arvid started to argue, but the door slammed in his face. He hitched up his calfskin belt and squared his shoulders. All right then. Even Thompson couldn't deny proof in black and white. Arvid reached into his wallet for his driver's license and his insurance card and then had to lean against the wall when he read them. 306? Surely not. 306? But how could one argue? Tentatively, he tried his key in the apartment next door. It opened smoothly, and familiar furnishings greeted him. Vanilla-scented candles, classic abstract prints, hardback novels arranged by color and size, and the cozy distinctions of an up-and-coming young manager's home. He sat in his mid-century armchair, sipping chai and ignoring the aggressive bass beats of the thick-shoed punk living above him. Calmer, he checked his magazines, his junk mail, even his lease, but they all agreed 306. He sighed. Exhaustion? Yes. Dinner and sleep, and this discrepancy would clear itself up. He awoke in an overstuffed bed placed wrong side against the wall. The sunlight, slanting in at an odd angle, landed on rather kitschy posters and an untidy desk. Perhaps he'd only dreamed of waking up. He shut his eyes and shook his head. But nothing changed. Arvid found his way to a bathroom, small and unremarkable, save that the pill bottles in the cabinet bore his name, and the mirror revealed a tapered haircut that he could never imagine requesting. This was some elaborate prank, he decided in the shower. He wondered if he were on camera. Annoying streamers were always doing such things for clicks these days. Though how they managed this trick he couldn't imagine. Still, an elaborate con seemed infinitely preferable to the alternative. Some malfunction in his brain. A worry that stubbornly persisted as he dressed. Dementia, he typed into his phone as he ate sweetened cereal with skim milk. A combination he found mildly unpalatable. The search returned a flood of info, none of which seemed quite pertinent. Amnesia? He tried. And then, as a long shot, hypnosis. Finally, he asked, why am I remembering things wrong? And was rewarded with a spate of links about a new phenomenon. It had a long clinical name, but a popular blogger had dubbed it Mandela Syndrome, and the term had stuck. Arvid had heard of Nelson Mandela vaguely, but unlike the people the Mandela effect was named after, he had no firm recollection of when or how the man had died. This surge of people in the past month arguing about basic history had prompted a flurry of speculation. He was skeptical that it proved the existence of alternative timelines or simulated universes. But the more mundane explanation, that all of his misremembering was a side effect of the virus he just recovered from, unsettled him more than he expected. See a neurologist, one commenter suggested, as though that were a simple matter. Make lists, others recommended, and he grabbed a flyer for an Ethiopian restaurant and, after double-checking, scrawled his address across the back. He wanted to read further, but, as it was, he was going to be late. After a moment's reflection, he looked up his work address and wrote it down as well. On the bus, safer not to drive, he kept his eyes studiously glued to his phone, avoiding the gaze of his fellow passengers. Disruption in the prefrontal cortex, he read, while the leather-clad teen across the aisle spasmed rhythmically to her headphones. He skimmed research into cascading demethylation, which he didn't really grasp, and ignored the mumbling of a lady in a cat sweater who he thought he recognized from next door. Arvid covered his nose as someone behind him lit a spliff. Like a drunken postal worker, one journalist wrote, delivering the right mail to the wrong address. An occasional raindrop struck the window as he scrolled, looking in vain for news of a cure. The bookstore, when he arrived, seemed familiar in an indistinguishable chain store way, although the colorful titles in the window perplexed him. Best-selling authors with improbable names shared shelves with autobiographies of overhyped celebrities. A science fiction trilogy advertised its tie-in with a series on a ridiculously named TV channel. Sign of the times, he told himself, more from habit than conviction. Straightening his tie, he entered. The faint aroma of ink greeted him at once, and he smiled. Ink implied permanence. Writing promised structure. Surely the pleasant associations here would alleviate his troubles. That optimism faltered when he noticed some obvious incongruities. Behind the counter, his third-grade teacher attended to a fractious customer, while at the back of the store, the shy one from a South Korean boy band was restocking the bargain table. He bit his lip. Was he truly awake? Right mail, wrong address. What is that if not the logic of dreams? As he hesitated, the mayor walked up and, arms at her hips, said, "Arvid, you're late for our meeting." Oh, how he wanted to exchange a few choice words with her regarding, but the specifics eluded him. Policing? Construction? It was irrelevant anyway. As a quick, surreptitious wiki search produced a picture of the politician considerably different from the middle-aged woman in polyester who now looked at him with concern. Was she the owner? An affiliate? He grasped for her name. Ellen? Arlene? He must have known it yesterday. Sweat began to pool under his pencil-thin mustache. He had hoped coming into work would stimulate some recall, but now realized that, although nightmares always end, impairment could be permanent. There had to be some remedy. Mandela treatment therapy help, he typed. Was that pity in her eyes when he looked up and stammered a response? Even the customer had stopped arguing to smirk and watch him struggle. Arvid's hand clenched, and he dropped his phone. When he picked it up, he saw it had cracked. And anyway, the responses to his query were all advertisements. Hastily, he shoved the device in his pocket and turned his head away. It had grown so dark outside that he caught his reflection in the glass of the door. A stranger, wild-eyed and overdressed, aped his every movement. He yanked open the door and fled. The neighborhood now was full of faces flickering on the edge of recognition. This street vendor, his landlord, that barista, a movie star? He nearly collided with his dead grandfather, who was lugging a cart full of ragged clothing down the sidewalk. Lightning sparked across the sky, illuminating his haggard, anonymous image in the storefronts. Before he reached the bus stop, the clouds opened up, so he took shelter in a laundromat, where, unaccountably, he rediscovered his face. Of all the morning's losses, this cut the deepest. When had his features slipped away? Had they vanished as he left his apartment? Had they lingered on the bus when he disembarked? Did they abandon him on the street for some passerby? Arvid grabbed the man's t-shirt. He pulled at his cheek, beat at his chest. How? How did you get it? The man shoved him away. Arvid saw the disgust in eyes that he'd once called his, the spittle that leaked from his own mouth as curses and threats poured out at him. And once again, he fled. Rain flooded over him. Hadn't he once led a well-ordered life? Hadn't he fought his way to a modest level of success? As he staggered down the street, that all seemed plausible. It followed that somewhere he owned a dry dwelling with a warm bed. He would go there and piece himself back together. He found an alley, leaned against a wall, and pulled out his list. It was soaked, and the ink had bled through so much it was unreadable. Sagging, he fell to the concrete. For several minutes Arvid sat, soot-drenched, shoes ruined, staring at the rivulets coursing in front of him. Suddenly, a man knelt beside him, offering to share an umbrella with 2 bent ribs. His teeth were cracked, and his pants held up by twine. "Need help, dude?" A small part of Arvid wanted to snub the offer, but for the life of him, he couldn't remember why.